Hi, I'm Mark Nelson from the Alley Recording Company.
And I'm Scott Fritz from Stranded on a Planet. Today on the top shelf, we're at the Chicago Recording Company in downtown Chicago, and we're going to be listening to the Bricasti M7 stereo reverb processor. Over the last 10 years, the M7's become somewhat of a modern-day classic, and for good reason. I've had one for a couple of years, and the level of depth and clarity in the reverbs, in my experience, is unparalleled in the digital world. We're also going to be speaking with Casey from Bricasti, one of the designers of the unit, and he's going to give us some tips and tricks while we record Sarah Marie Young and her band using 3 M7s and an M10 remote, so we can hear how using multiple reverbs on one mix can give an even greater sense of depth. Let's check it out.
About 12 years ago, I had the pleasure of starting my career at CRC, known for decades as the largest and most successful recording facility in the Midwest. CRC's vast clientele ranges from Michael Jackson to Smashing Pumpkins, Sting to Pearl Jam, Wilco to Coldplay. Today we'll be in Studio 5, using only the dead room so we have complete control over the space and the reverb.
So we're here with Casey Dowdell from Bricasti. Thanks for coming, Casey.
Hey, love it.
And so before Bricasti, what were you doing?
I had worked for Hewlett-Packard for many years doing graphic chip design, and I went into the medical industry and did a lot of ultrasound systems, so you may have used some of my technology if you've ever looked at your baby before it was born. So that was a really great experience, but when I had the chance to go work at Lexicon, I jumped at that because what a great gig, you know, terrific company, a lot of great people there. And eventually I decided to move on. I was actually listening one day in a sound room to one of the old Death Cab for Cutie, their old DIY albums, and that guy could just hit that snare. And I heard that, and it was, I think, you know, there was no reverb on it, but it was recorded in a great space, like a barn or something like that. And I just said, you know, really, there aren't reverbs out there that can do that type of sound. And
Like
I really
a
wanted
room duplicated sound, not just a processed reverb.
So it was that sort of sent me, and the next day I thought about it, I talked to my wife, came in, and I wrote up my resignation letter, and as it turned out that day, all of the managers that I could resign to were at an offsite, so I had to wait an extra day. So I came in, and, you know, so that was kind of the story of the beginning.
You know, a couple people were asking this question, which is, maybe you can explain a little bit about the mathematical design process of the M7.
Yeah, wow, jumping right into it. Well, right in. You know, you're right, there's a lot that goes into it, and when I set out to develop this reverb, I kind of had a box full of tools that I was aware of, that all of the reverbs that I knew of had been built on this kit, this little toolbox. I knew that in order to advance the art, which I really desperately wanted to do, that I had to build a new toolkit, and that took a lot of thinking and going down different paths that some bore fruit and some did not. But ultimately I hit on an idea that I thought had a lot of promise. And I say it that way because I'm not the type that sits down and listens to things and decides or looks at waveforms. In fact, before, I had never seen the waveforms coming out of a Bricasti until I saw them published in a magazine someplace, you know. So it's, my whole way of working is thought experiments, coming up with these ideas. And it was literally maybe 2.5 years into the process before I ever heard the first reverb from the result, you know, that resulted from these thought experiments. The toolkit evolved, and I was able to put them together in ways that really are unique, haven't been done before in reverb, and that's why the M7 is unique in its own way. But one of the interesting things that I recall from the development was I started out on a laptop that is, you know, maybe about 1/20th the performance of what most school kids go to school with today. So it was, what, 7 or 8 years ago, longer than that I started the development of this. And I knew that in order to implement the ideas that I had, I needed to create a set of numbers that were used in the underlying algorithm. And these numbers were created offline. They're not created when you turn the reverb on. They were actually created on this laptop. And it took me 3 years from the time that I said go to when those numbers were actually finished and were calculated. And so today, I mean, I think you could do it in, I don't know, 2 or 3 months, which is still a lot of time and it still would make an interesting story. But the fact that it was 3 years I thought was very interesting. And you look at it, and that's even using some of the really great tools that we have today, you know, that we can put to bear to solve these types of problems. But it's those kinds of things. It's the thought experiments. It's the implementation of you know, things that really hadn't been done before. And you know, the hearing was just the icing on the cake. In fact, we went to an AES show, and I had only heard it for about a week before that, but I had never heard it out in a real space. I had heard it just in my studio. I put some headphones on at the studio, and somebody was plugging a jack into the back of our little demo unit, and I was hearing just that, you know, the sound of a jack being plugged in, right? And I was listening on the headphones, and I thought, okay, what I was hearing was actually the sound of somebody with a jackhammer. Like, I was visioning that maybe somebody had to put up something at the trade show and they were using a jackhammer on the concrete floor. And I took the headphones off and I literally asked, I hope, just making a joke, I hope they stop that jackhammering before the show starts. And they said, what? You know? And it was then that I knew, man, if you could fool yourself, that's really great. You know, you can add some space to a sound. And I was blown away by that. I said, I never really said anything to them at the time, but I just said to myself, wow, I love it.
Did something right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. I remember when I first met you at AES a couple years ago, you told me that each preset actually contains 10 different reverbs.
Yeah, well, in the strictest sense, that's true, and it's not that it's 10 channels or anything. It's that you have, out of your stereo returns, a lot of people have talked about layering. If you read the forums, they say layering reverbs. I like this one with this one and that. But with the M7, it sort of does its own layering. So there's 4 reverbs that really are generating the tail. There are 4 reverbs that are generating the reflections that are more distinct sounds within the earlier portion, typically, of the reverb. And then there are actually 2 other reverbs that are for very low frequency sounds. So very low frequency is a tough thing to get right with traditional techniques. And I came up with just a very different idea for what I wanted to do for low frequency. So there's anything, it's a very steep filter, and it's around 125 hertz. So everything below 125 hertz has its own separate reverb that is used. So all of them can be adjusted separately from the late to the early, but you can also adjust that very low frequency reverb called the VLF control. And we need to look at that when we demo it, because it's very interesting, and you wouldn't think that there would be much reverb or even use for reverb, because you think of it as being mud. But if you handle it correctly, it can be a really useful tool. So we should look at that.
Let's go upstairs to Studio 5 and take a listen to the 3 M7s.
Okay, we're up in Studio 5 now, and Casey's going to show us a couple of experiments, and we have the artist Sarah Marie Young, and we're going to take a listen to a couple different combinations. So go ahead and play the track.
Well, we just really had the pleasure of listening to a really nice jazz session track here, and since it is a group performance, I'm going to go for trying to first set up the band in one consistent space. So I think a more intimate space seems to work well with this. So bring these up, and here we have our basic room.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah. So I thought it'd be nice to bring up the bass because I like to get the sound of the bass in the room, and normally we don't think about that with respect to reverb. One of the things that I like to do is when I'm working with this, I kind of call this the floor because it's more of the feel, and it's really put together. This is more the feel of the low end as opposed to what you hear. You know, obviously you do hear it, but it's really, it gives it that oomph, or less of it if that's what the song calls for it. This is demonstrating those two low frequency.
What was that, 125 and down?
Yeah, it's a very steep filter, so it's...
So this is specifically focusing on the low end.
Right. So I'm going to bring that up slowly, and you can sort of start to hear.
And it gives it some nice width.
Yeah, and that's interesting to me too, because it's always difficult to find something to put on a bass like this, especially in a...
It's almost dropped the octave.
And not just EQ.
Not just EQ, but also to get that space. You know, you don't want to use a delay on something like this. You know, a chorus. You know, I don't think they're going to appreciate this, right, as an artist. But here you don't really notice. It just sounds like, okay, that's what it sounded like in the room. Here again, this is without it, and then we'll give you a chance to listen to it with it fully in. Bringing it up. And the reason that I like to bring the bass in is because it's like in any good studio room, it's like adjusting the bass traps, you know, until you've got the sound in the room that you want, but here we can do it after the fact. So it's a nice tool to be able to use, and I point it out primarily because you oftentimes lose sight of the fact that low end, reverb, what am I trying to do? Create a space, but you don't think about bass. Bass always equals mud in reverb, but not in this case. So why don't we, when we bring in the rest of the band except for Sarah, and we'll take a listen to what we've got now in this room. Okay.
Now, do you want to cut out everything verb-wise, or you just want to listen?
No, I want to listen to this. So here we are with a few more elements in the room, and we'll let this sink in for a little bit.
Now, does this Rhodes have anything on it?
It should.
Okay.
I mean, why not?
So we're going to put that same room on the Rhodes.
Yeah. Everything in there, everything that we tracked should be in this room.
Studio B far.
That's the preset?
Studio B close, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of choices, but that would be
what we have here.
That's representing the room itself.
Yeah. And that's just trying to put everyone in their own space. And again, this is a true stereo process. So you have, the reverb is really following the pans, so you don't need to do anything in the reverb or do anything out of the ordinary. You can mix it right from your console. All right. Listen to this for a minute. Now if we want to start thinking about adding some additional reverb, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a reverb that, well, it's going to ultimately be on the vocal as well, but we'll listen to it on the snare now. This is Sunset Chamber. And what I've done is I've gone in, and because we already have the room on here, which is what we just did, that studio, I'm going to take the earlies just completely out of this reverb because you really don't want your specialty reverbs to be imposing yet another room. We've already established the room. So I'm taking the earlies and I've cut them out with the early mix. You can see that I've pulled those all the way down to 0. So we're going to go back to this, and we're going to bring this up for our sax. Okay, so now we're going to bring Sarah in and let her enjoy really the same chamber that we were just listening to on the sax.
This is Sunset Chamber.
This is Sunset Chamber.
This is the Sunset Chamber. Yeah.
How could you leave my side like there was no other possibility? Now I'm left all alone, wondering what will become of me. Though I've seen a lot of loving, I don't know what I'm gonna do this time.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
This time.
Reverb sounds all right too.
Sounds pretty good.
She's great. All right, so one of the things that I'm going to do now is, because she's...
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Well, I think our tastes, you know, while this is a jazz track, I think our tastes have really gotten swayed a little bit by some of the pop vocals that we hear. So in order to sort of oomph her vocals up a little bit, if I can use that word, I'm going to bring in sort of very specialty reverb, and this
Really nice top end on that.
yeah, this reverb just really emphasizes sibilance and that cutting. And I've got it way higher right now just so we can all hear it. But I'm going to vary this once we get done it, but I want to be able to hear this. The other thing I would say with this also is that what I've done is I've dialed in a delay roughly in tempo, and what it does is this is something I noticed on some early Gino Vanelli records when they had a chamber and they really wanted a little bit more reverb. And since this is going to be buried, we can kind of give it that extra oomph. What they would do is on a repro head, they would actually take a tape delay and push it into the chamber again. Yeah. So you got this extra
double dump.
So we're gonna use that effect on this specialty delay, but since it's buried, it's not really going to be real prominent. So we're going to have this on here, and then I'm going to bring back the chamber as well.
Definitely a fun concept using multiple reverbs and figuring out between the VLF and then the high end of the ice beads and then the chamber how they can all play together.
Ice beads is the preset, by the way, that we're using here. Yeah. And it just gives that little extra sizzle that I had noticed a lot of people in LA are using that preset these days.
Ice beads?
Yeah.
Sizzly.
But what I've done, in addition to adding the delay, I've pulled the reverb time back on this quite a bit. So it's like about 1.5 seconds. I think the preset normally comes up with quite a bit more reverb time, like 5 seconds or something, which I don't find that useful, but around 1.5 seconds seems to work pretty well for this application.
I want to give a big thanks to Dennis Tusana from Absolute Audio for engineering the session today, and Chicago Recording Company for hosting this. And Casey, a little thanks for flying all the way out from East Coast. Thanks a lot.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, we had a good time.
My pleasure.
Now we're going to wrap things up with a full performance by Sarah Marie Young. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on The Top Shelf.
was no getting over you, and we spent our last days wondering why we fight the way that we do. How could you leave my side like there was no other possibility? Now I'm left all alone, wondering what will become of me. Though I've seen a lot of love, and I don't know what I'm gonna do this time. This time